Well, we're going to talk to a Lib Dem now. He's Pablo O'Hana, is a former Lib Dem senior advisor. Pablo, are we being unfair in slightly mocking the Lib Dems for wearing sandals? Have you got any sandals?
Pablo looks very smart, we should say.
Yeah, I have actually never seen sandals at Lib Dem conference, but I will concede.
Oh, you haven't been going to many enough conferences.
I don't think they have it anymore, but they used to have one of the images on the membership card. You could choose someone wearing sandals with yellow socks, which not my vibe, but I will concede that it did exist.
Well, shall we get on to the serious politics? And quite an extraordinary speech made by Ed Davey yesterday, very much focused on what he perceives the danger that a Farage government would make to Britain. Do you think he was fair in his criticisms of Farage and Reform?
I do, and I think one of the interesting things, and you guys might have seen this as well, is, I mean, you talked there about how much Ed Davey mentioned Nigel Farage and Reform, and there is not an insignificant chance that the next election will be a Lib Dem Reform fight. I mean, Labour and Conservatives, we all know, are just collapsing at the moment. You know, I'm not saying this is a given, but I don't think it's that surprising that actually both at the Reform conference and at the Dem conference that they are sort of kind of coming at each other and are sort of seeing each other as the antidote to each other. So I think that it's not that surprising that Ed Davey went for Farage, and I do think that, you know, to his credit, Farage is incredibly successful at opening the door, letting in the draft for things that people feel passionate about, whether it's immigration and Brexit. You know, today he had some slightly questionable comments about paracetamol and autism, but one thing you can't argue with, as I say, is Farage's ability to open that door. Ed Davey's job in this speech was to show voters what's on the other side of that door and keep it slammed shut, especially on gun laws. So, you know, he did his job as leader. I think he met the moment. I didn't find it sort of surprising that he went for the jugular with Nigel Farage.
Was it really fair, though, to depict what Farage may have said 11 years ago about gun control with what's happening in America, where we have, regrettably, school massacres on a regular basis because it is widely reported there are more guns in America than there are people, and the population of America is 330 million?
Yes, and I will say, having, you know, I worked on Kamala Harris's campaign, and the gun epidemic in America is real and it's grim. I do think that it is fair to hold Nigel Farage accountable. If he wants to distance himself from those comments, then he could come out right now and do so.
He already has. I think he already has, and said that he has no intention for a Reform government to change gun law.
But he is importing the division and the kind of rhetoric from America. He has aligned himself incredibly close to Trump. If he wants to come out and make it absolutely clear, and he wants to define policies that will do that and explicitly argue against that, then he can do. But I don't think that it is unfair for Ed Davey to compare what Nigel Farage has done his whole career and expose that Nigel Farage, you know, is incredibly close to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's America has a lot of issues, healthcare, gun laws being two fairly major ones that are very, very different to us over here in the UK. And so, you know, that is what leaders do. They say, this is the vision that they're presenting, this is the vision that we're presenting. You know, as you guys said before, people love to remind of all the mistakes that the Liberal Democrats did 10, 15 years ago, even though they have consistently distanced themselves and kind of walked away from it. So, you know, I think Ed Davey did what he needed to do as a leader, which is warn about those real world consequences of a very serious policy drift.
Do you think we should take the Lib Dems more seriously? There is sometimes a temptation, certainly in the last Parliament, when there are very few Lib Dem MPs, to make a little joke about it. Ed Davey doesn't help himself by engaging in these quite extraordinary stunts. Here we've got a picture of him on a paddleboard. But they could hold the balance of power at the next election. They could potentially, he's just fallen off, have to negotiate. He threw himself in the water. He didn't fall off at all. They could have to negotiate a coalition. We should be paying attention to what their policies are, shouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this, you know, the stunts, gosh, everyone's had their hot take on them, haven't they? But the stunts, you know, they do have a serious message behind them. And I think that, you know, we should be allowed to say that it's okay to smile in politics. I think it's very easy because we're, you know, everyone has their different positions on various policies, or they support a different party. But we're allowed to say that at the end of the day, that's our country. And that we should be really proud that our country has lots of different parties, whether it's Reform, Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative, you know, the Green Party. It's okay for us to disagree, but also to have a bit of fun doing it. And I think if Ed Davey wants to build a sandcastle, fall off a paddleboard whilst talking about, you know, sewage in rivers or whatever, I think that's fine. I think that there is a serious message. Well, I know there's a serious message behind each of those, and to say that, you know, we can you know, disagree whilst smiling, whilst enjoying politics as well, and making sure that it's not just divisive. But yes, to your point, it is important. I mean, we've had this issue before where the Lib Dems are kind of pushed aside and suddenly everyone kind of scrambles because they become important again. I mean, I would say this obviously, but I do think that it is important to keep an eye on them because, as you say, they could be kingmakers in the next election, and they have learnt from previous experience. I think you'll find that they'll be a lot stronger in negotiations and their red lines will be a lot clearer. If I was one of the big parties, or even Nigel Farage, you would want to pay attention as to what they're talking about. And of course,
Pablo, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much for your insight this morning. That's Pablo O'Hana, former Lib Dem advisor.
Who has no sandals.
Very
Up next,
establish that.
the US talk show host Jimmy Kimmel